All right, well, we'll start with the first of three presentations we're going to kind of go over this week. This one in particular, what I want to do is kind of introduce strategy in general from an IT perspective. What do we need to accomplish for our IT organization to really meet the goals of the business? So the first thing we need to do is really think through the strategy. What are we trying to accomplish with this technology department and with our budget? 48% of companies are cutting waste out of their IT budgets. Really, that's pretty easy to do. I mean, it's a goal. You can meet those goals. Everyone can cut. What we haven't figured out is how to increase value out of those IT departments, and that's the real trick. That's what's going to make a business succeed or fail. You can't cut your way to success, right? Eventually, you just cut your way out of being able to manage your information. So you've got to identify what's going to increase value, and that's your foundation for execution. The IT infrastructure, the digitized business processes, automating a business's core capabilities. That's what we need to be able to get to, and how we do that most efficiently should be driving what you do in terms of the strategy for technology. There has to be tight alignment between the business objectives and your IT execution. So that foundation for execution is going to be built really from the understanding of the business itself. You look at what IT systems really are foundational to success of the business and build around those. Typical strategic planning doesn't really work. And the reason it doesn't, it gets people to think about it, so you got that good. But the reason it usually fails is because you wind up implementing IT solutions in a stepwise fashion. You lay a strategy out, you break out what you're going to accomplish, and then you start working those. But the business changes in the middle of that execution. And then you're left sort of with a bunch of initiatives that are sucking up money and not really getting you anywhere. So there's three disciplines we need to understand. Number one, what's our operating model for the business? How do we map to that? Two, what's the enterprise architecture? The whole point of this class, which is the organizing logic for business processes and all the IT infrastructure that we're going to implement. And then third, what's the IT engagement model? How we're going to have governance mechanisms around that, and how is it going to achieve the overall objectives for the company from an IT perspective? So why is this foundation important? Well, a number of reasons. You look at this graph and it basically lays it out for you. You've got some operating model that's going to be your overall business, and it's going to map the integration standardization. There's an enterprise architecture that's going to manage the IT stuff within there. And you're going to have some strategic initiatives you're trying to get to, an engagement model below that sort of tells you how we're going to actually get all the information technology stuff implemented with the business. And then this foundation for execution, which is going to be your core business processes along with the IT infrastructure. You'll have learning and exploitation that goes up the left there. You'll have new priorities that are coming in down the right from these strategic initiatives from a company perspective. And all this stuff has to sort of interact in order to have success in terms of mapping to a good strategy. Business agility is going to depend on these all interacting correctly. Your environments are going to require it because of various standards that you need to meet and reporting requirements that we'll have. And frankly, this architecture is a lot less risky than any of the alternatives that you have because of the connectivity within it. It isn't going to magically appear overnight, though. It's going to rely on understanding a good your operating model and having a good business operating model, then having good strategy and good planning that will accompany that. So the first of those steps we talked about was defining the operating model. This is really looking at your company and how it wants to thrive and grow. And it's something you kind of got to understand. You got to look at the company and understand this because there are a lot of different companies with different models. Key dimensions that you're going to have are integration and standardization. So integration means, links the efforts of the organization through shared data. So the cost of integration associated with that, but it's going to be cost of matching and mapping the data for the organization. Standardization then defines how a process will be executed regardless of who's performing it. Cost of standardization is going to include, some loss of local flexibility to meet varying demands, and you get standardized processes on top of it. So there's a spectrum on both of those. Both of those are going to be your axes that you're kind of looking at here. So if you combine high and low of each one of those, you'll wind up with these four operating models. The first is coordination, high integration, low standardization. Here you've got seamless access to shared data. All your IT decisions are made at the business unit. The business unit controls and has consensus over design. This makes streams of innovations easy, right? But it makes acquisition tough. You've got to integrate data into new customers for existing products. There's a unification, which has high standardization and high coordination. These are standardized and integrated processes. So ID decisions may be made centrally, but the owners design the standardized processes. This allows for organic growth, economies of scale, moving existing products into new markets. You can acquire competitors with the same kind of foundation, but you have to rip and replace the infrastructure behind them. If you have diversification, this is where you've got real independence with some shared services, right? So low integration, low standardization. Really aren't many standards. Company grows only through business unit growth. So as the business units themselves grow, then the company grows. And your acquisition is going to be bounded by shareholder value. With replication, you get standardized independence. So low integration, but high standardization. So you may have a bunch of businesses out there that aren't really defining or sharing the data, but they all do things the same way. You can acquire competitors, but you have to replace their processes. And your organic growth is replicating best practices into new markets. So once you understand that strategy, then you look at your business strategy and say, okay, within that then, what are our main strategies? There's three of them. There's operational excellence, meaning our business is going to succeed because we're operationally better than our competitors. Customer intimacy, basically we've got the best satisfaction customer relationship. Or product leadership, meaning we're just going to have the best product, right? And we're not going to focus on our operations or on a customer. We're going to focus on the best product and let everything fall out from there. So think about Apple, product leadership, customer intimacy, a lot of businesses and restaurants, things like that. Operational excellence, think of your logistics, your Walmart, things like that have reduced cost over time. Products aren't any better, right, but they're more operationally successful. Some businesses can be a combination of those two. Most have some elements of each. Then once you decide that, you got to look at your plan and say, all right, well, how are we going to control our destiny? It'd be great if on the left there, we could do all of our technology investments along a path towards where we want to be. Reality is, business changes. You just got to make sure each one adds value to the organization so that over time you're getting up where you need to be. On the right, if you don't have a strategy or a plan in place for IT, you're all over the map. You either got no plan, you're not going anywhere, or you're doing things that just don't make any sense and aren't providing value for the business. So you got to think in terms of where we're going to make those investments. That's what gets us involved with the overall strategic planning process and the strategy process. What are we going to need to have? We have governance and organizational involvement here. That means an IS steering committee. That IS steering committee is not supposed to be IS, all right? You don't want the fox in the hen house here. It should be all areas of the business that need to use their information and want to understand information. They will do that. That's who should be involved with that. Executive management should be sponsors. The IS should be involved in this, but not from a voting perspective, but from a sanity check perspective and some ideas. We know what's out there in the market and what can be applied. 4 main steps to strategic direction that we'll start talking through. 1, understand the business. 2, define the business. 3, define the IT role and mission. And 4, prepare the plan. Bulk of the activity is spent understanding the business, and that's what we're going to go into this week. And defining our IT role and mission. The focus, once we understand, as we did this week in this presentation, what the business is trying to accomplish, what the overall approach is, and where our strategy is going to make the best impact. Now we look at it and say more specifically, what do we need to actually start managing in terms of information? That's what we'll start talking about next.